Welcome to the BioStock studio here at Medicon Village in Lund. Today we have with us Martin Vallée, CEO, and Mohamed Fazel, Scientific Manager of BrainCool, a medical cooling company. During last week and this weekend, new guidelines for medical cooling of cardiac arrest patients have been presented, and we are going to hear a few comments about this from the guys from BrainCool. Welcome, Mohamed. Welcome, Martin. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Martin, I'm going to address you first with a short question. What do these new guidelines, what kind of implications do they have for BrainCool as a company?
Starting with the US guidelines, which are final, I would like to highlight three factors. Implementation of high-quality TTM system. That is products that have a control loop system that ensures precise, effective temperature management. There is essentially only three players, and BrainCool is one of them. And these new guidelines, combined with recent collaborations with two GPOs, put BrainCool in a very good situation to further create sales in the market. Number two is a clear recommendation for early cooling as soon as possible. BrainCool is the only one that has a safe and proven method. In America, this will actually lead to a high degree of ammunition towards the FDA to support our de novo 510(k) process approval of the RhinoShield device. And the third one is actually that the patient population is expanded to include all cardiac arrest patients. Mohamed will present a little bit more in detail, but it's almost doubling the number of patients which we are targeting.
Yeah, Mohamed, I would like to ask you to, if you can short also in brief, explain something about the science behind the early cooling. Why is this important, the early cooling of cardiac arrest patients? And early cooling being a key selling point for BrainCool.
Yeah. Offering an early cooling by RhinoShield, which has been also implemented in the pre-hospital environment and also in the emergency department in hospital, has been a key element for the BrainCool company. According to the new guideline, target temperature management implementation remains very strong treatment for these patient populations. And interestingly enough, that early cooling is recommended as the top 10 take-home messages in the new guideline, which speaks for the phrase of time is brain, which emphasizing that the nervous tissue in the human rapidly lost without any oxygen and lack of supply of the blood-brain. So if you want to look at the science behind that, maybe one should look at the last 10-15 years, which has been an interesting journey for target temperature management and also post-sudden cardiac arrest care. Starting from all animal study, experimental, which shows that the early cooling can provide superior neuroprotections when compared with the later stage cooling. Up to the last year, with the two strong publications clinically, one Princess which used RhinoShield and another one was Canadian trial that they look at the early and compare with the later stage cooling inside the hospital in around 570 patients. Both of these publications published in the high impact factor. For example, Princess published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Society, with impact factor of 45. Or the Canadian trial published in the JAHA, Journal of American Heart Association, with impact factor of 5. So, for example, Princess trial shows that if you can implement and start cooling within 20 minutes, the chance of survival rate and neurological outcome can significantly improve. For example, if you want to quantify that, if one can start cooling within 30 minutes of the collapse, in subgroup of patients, you can basically, we call it CPC, cerebral performance category, is a fully recovery of patients after the cardiac arrest, so they can back to their normal life. So the chance would be 70% compared to 20%. Basically, you are improving patient care by a factor of 3. So the another thing about the Princess trial, that shows the RhinoShield, like using an evaporative cooling technique, is hemodynamically safe. And one thing that I think we should notice in Princess trial compared to the previous trials, that when we compare the control group with the intervention group, the patient that received RhinoShield as a treatment without RhinoShield, and they got the cooling once the patient arrived to the ICU. So if we look at the time to the target temperature, in the RhinoShield group, it was around 100 minutes versus 180 minutes in the control group. So we are comparing a good with the very good group. While if you look at the previous clinical trial, we are looking at about the time to target temperature is about 300 up to 700 minutes. So even the control group in the Princess trial, they got faster time to the target by factor of 3 to 7. So this is very important, but the still Princess or early cooling shows that time is a brain. So we have to start cooling as early as possible, and we are thrilled to see that finally in the American Heart Association is mentioned in the top take-home messages for post-cardiac arrest care.
Time is brain. That's very clear message. Martin, you mentioned the number of patients, the patient population will, you said double, I think. In concrete numbers, with the new guidelines, what kind of target market are you addressing with your products?
Well, with the support of the new guidelines, both shockable and non-shockable cardiac arrest patients should be cooled. So that in essence means that all cardiac arrest patients should be cooled as soon as possible. And that amounts to about 600,000 patients per year in the US.
The American Heart Association in the US and the European Resuscitation Council in Europe obviously are they're major authorities on the care of cardiac arrest patients. What impact do you think that their guidelines will have on clinical practice in the short term versus the long term?
Very good questions. I wanted to add something to Martin's previous answer, that we have to be aware that out of 600,000 people that experience cardiac arrest, 75% of these patients experience it out of the hospital. So that's why early starting target temperature management would save up a lot of neuroprotection effects to these patients. So I think that the new guideline would implement it in all patients, because brain doesn't care about, as you mentioned, shockable or non-shockable, brain doesn't care about your heart rhythm. So every patient, regardless, should get cooling as fast as possible.
So they should be cooled in the field, before the ambulance. That's what
exactly, ideally. So back to your question about the short-term impacts and long-term. I think we have to look at the jurisdiction, what jurisdiction we are looking into it. But I believe in general, for short-term impact, in both US and European countries, more clinic sites would switch to the high-quality target temperature management implementations, which requires a very advanced cooling, medical cooling systems. And also in Europe, I believe that the demand for RhinoShield is expected to be increased, since RhinoShield is the only device or system that can provide early, effective, and safe cooling, earlier stage cooling to the patients. For a long-term impact is a tricky question, but depend on a different aspect. Of course, a technology that can, first of all, combine the earlier stage cooling all the way for the continuum care. It started from maybe at the scene and all the way going for a couple of days. And also we are working to bring RhinoShield to the US market, which I believe that Martin can make a comment on that too.
Yeah. So these guidelines, I mean, in what way do they favor BrainCool's products, would you say, Martin?
They're right up our alley. I mean, if you look at the guidelines in the US, they support early adoption of RhinoShield at the scene. it supports our strategy to combine the two devices, continuum of care. We're the only ones that could treat the patient in the whole flow. But lastly, right now, iCool system is the only device we have approved in the US. We got support there too. It's really a focus on implementing of advanced TTM system, where BrainCool is in the forefront. Not only in cardiac arrest, we do trials in fever management of COVID-19, we received pandemic grants. We are extremely well positioned to short-term get more business and long-term to be the leading player in the field.
That was actually going to be my next question. Then, how do you expect that the new guidelines will affect concrete sales and interest from potential clients going forward?
One should bear in mind that BrainCool's organization is roughly 18, 19 people. We still don't even have a sales person recruiting in the Nordic markets. We have one person in Germany, and during the COVID crisis, we're maybe 3 and 4 in the US. Our focus is Germany and the US. And the reason for that is that it's countries with a high degree of implementation. And there's one structure per country. So the American guidelines, they will affect 52 states in America. And if the ERC guidelines are not good enough for the Germans, they implement their own guidelines. So our focus are these two markets. But of course, the new ERC guidelines will open up many business opportunities throughout Europe, which we probably have to analyze which market we should support, because BrainCool is still a small company and have to make selection of which markets we're going to enter.
So, Mohammed, we talked about early cooling and Rhino-Chill obviously being a first choice there. What in the new guidelines support using the iCool or BrainCool system?
Very good questions. Because if we look at the target temperature management or guideline after sudden cardiac arrest, we mentioned that we have to start cooling and bring the temperature to the target as fast as possible. Time is critical, which we covered in the previous questions. But once the patient reaches the target temperature, what are the requirements? What are the recommendations? So the patient has to stay in the target temperature for at least 24 hours in a very controlled manner. So basically, high quality target temperature management before slowly rewarm it back to the normal temperature. This requires advanced medical cooling system. Fortunately, we are very thrilled that we are working with the devices with the sophisticated software, iCool and BrainCool system, that are equipped with the software that can precisely manage the patient temperature in this range with a very good control manner. And also another advantage of iCool or BrainCool system, I would say, about the usability of using the corresponding pads that made with the silicone, soft silicone pads, which make it easier for usability for nurses to check the skins, and also for duration, so it lasts longer compared to the competitive products in the market. So I believe that BrainCool and iCool system can provide high quality target temperature management with the good precise technology.
So basically we have new guidelines in place, new recommendations that do actually favor using BrainCool's products, and you can also predict that this will affect driving sales going forward. Martin, I would like to ask you then, do these new guidelines supporting your product offering, does it change anything in how competitors or potential buyers would consider BrainCool a potential buyout target?
First of all, I'd like to stress BrainCool focus is on Swedish. Our goal is to build a big and successful company. We're one of the few serious European players. There's competition from Japan and the US, and we have implemented a quite clear and direct strategy that the Europeans should support companies like us to be big and not to be bought by the odd American. So that answered the first question. The second one, the guidelines are right up our alley. We are the only ones that have continuum of care. We think already that we're technology leaders. We have the guidelines, We're supported by 2 GPOs. There's a big installed base of water blanket systems in the US, simpler system. They're now up for grabs. Okay, we're a small company. I get it. But in a short period of time, since US approval 2018, we got 2 GPOs backing us. We got guidelines. So I think we're in a pretty good position to build shareholder value for our shareholders.
So a few years back, when BrainCool actually acquired then RhinoChill for a meager sum of, I think, was 19 million SEK, was this scenario something that you anticipated?
I mean, we're working on the same strategy as since myself and 2 other guys started the company. Implement early cooling as possible to transform this market. It is taking a lot of work, but I think we are on the right path with the sudden cardiac arrest patients. But I'm also convinced that we're going to transform the market in neurology. For example, thrombectomy, we're supported by the European Union. We have established very important trials within fever management of COVID-19 pandemic patients. So strategy is something that you said afterwards. So of course, we followed our strategy, but we have envisioned this, but it's taking slightly longer than I expected.
However, BrainCool then riding the winds of change in your favor right now. I would like to say thank you very much to both of you for coming here today.
Our pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.